A new film by Robert Eggers has entered the theater, Nosferatu, a retelling of the old silent film of the same name. I have yet to see it, but it reminded me of a film I watched a few years ago, also directed by Robert Eggers. The Lighthouse is a very deep and pretty much infinitely interpretable movie. Briefly summarized, it's a deep psychological dive into a character who slowly loses his mind, with interesting symbolism which is rather blatant in some areas, like that of the myth of Prometheus, and in other areas it is foggy. But the fogginess of this film, even though I feel like I didn't understand it part of the time, served the film well. Something else that served the film well was the 4:3 aspect ratio, as well as the complete lack of color. The lack of color is an interesting choice. Using black and white in a colorized film era is not an original concept of this movie. However, it was a specific choice that helped portray the ideas of this film better. None of Eggers' other movies use purely black and white, so this was indeed a deliberate choice for this film. First, let's hear from Eggers himself on why he did the film in black and white.
There's something about black and white that was going to make this crusty, dusty world really come to life and bring the story to a new level. This film was hard to photograph because of the black and white negative. It requires a lot more light. There's scenes where there's one lamp on the table illuminating them, but that had like a light bulb in it that was blindingly bright.
So it seems like Eggers had this sort of subconscious feeling that the film would be better portrayed in black and white. And maybe his reasoning ended there, but I wanted to see exactly how this affects the film, and perhaps compare it to if it were in color. I did want to take a few moments to explain how the use of black and white directly affects the story itself. While I do think this film could have possibly worked in color, using black and white for this film specifically was interesting. While most of the time it served to create an unnerving atmosphere, for scenes involving the lighthouse specifically, however, it created binary extremes of white and black, as well as a bit of gray, of course. It made the light in the lighthouse seem more perfect and more ominous. I believe the light is supposed to represent something that a human should not see or know. The idea of a blinding light with no color to tint it really helps the light seem more, well, bright, or transcendent of human understanding. Many people say this movie represents the myth of Prometheus, like I said earlier, which I think is undeniable. But I think, perhaps unintentionally, it also resembles the myth of Pandora's box. Pandora's box is another Greek myth that directly follows the myth of Prometheus. Zeus was mad at Prometheus for stealing fire from Olympus and giving it to the humans, so he banished him to an eternal punishment. On top of this, Zeus created Pandora, the first woman, as well as a box, or jar depending on the version. Zeus gave strict instructions to not open the box under any circumstances whatsoever. Pandora did not open the box at first, but curiosity of what was in the box overwhelmed her. She had no idea what was in the box and no idea what it would do. Zeus didn't say there was any benefit to opening it or anything, all he said was not to open it. Curiosity eventually overtook Pandora, and she opened the box. By doing this, she unleashed evils and disease into the world, showcasing a massive detriment to human curiosity. At the bottom of the box was hope, something that represents humanity's constant struggle against suffering and hope of fighting the evil of the world. The lighthouse is a bit different, however, but there still are parallels to be noted. The lighthouse, unlike Pandora's box, does not literally unleash evils into the world upon opening, but Robert Pattinson's character, Ephraim Winslow, is constantly intrigued by it. Like in the myth of Pandora's box, he is seemingly pulled in, wanting to know what's in the light that's so entrancing.
He believed that there was some enchantment in the light. He notioned that St. Elmo had cast his very fire into it. Salvation, said he. Tall tales.
Robert Eggers also stated that he wanted the movie's ending to be rather ambiguous. Perhaps the black and white filming, as well as the aspect ratio, made it seem like an imitation of an old film. However, I don't think this was a goal, considering the sound quality is normal, and it was shot on a modern camera used in many big films, merely with certain lenses and of course black and white film. Here's what I think. Black and white gives this strange, in this case uncomfortable feeling. There's this theory called, broadly put, color psychology. It is a theory that different colors and exposures to different colors can in some cases drastically affect your mood and the way you act. Color psychology doesn't have much experimentation to back it up, and has been proclaimed to be partially placebo, but I think it's a bit more than placebo. It has been proven that seasonal depression is a thing that affects people. Shorter days and less sunlight can affect human minds. This is not an innate condition and can be developed by potentially anyone. Winter is also characterized by more muted and dull tones. This association of seasonal affective disorder and duller colors can make duller colors seem more unnerving, unsettling, and uncomfortable. Well, why would any film use black and white then? Many films use colors in creative ways to convey messages, and if the use of no colors makes one uncomfortable, what use would it have? Well, a movie like The Lighthouse is a perfect example. Apart from the contents of the movie, the constant black and white gives a feeling of almost hopelessness. So, while black and white used to merely be a limitation of films back before color films existed, now it can be used to accentuate messages. Like I said earlier, The Lighthouse is not the only film to use it. It was used in Schindler's List, another good example of it being used well, which is not only in black and white, but certain elements are in color, giving an interesting creative take on the story about the Holocaust. Even in movies of color, duller, grayer, and gloomier scenes are used to portray moods of discomfort or sadness. While Robert Eggers is pretty new to filmmaking, I'm excited to see what he has to offer. The Lighthouse was a really interesting and psychological, mind-bending, surreal movie. I really felt what the characters in it felt. Sure, there were acts to this movie, but I did feel like I lost a sense of time. Not in a bad or boring way, rather in an immersive way. While this video was about how black and white affects the film's tone, I do appreciate this film in general and think that it was fascinatingly done. If you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out my other content, and if you enjoy it, please consider subscribing. I also want to say a huge thank you for 1,000 subscribers. Peak Stasis is truly taking off, and I can't thank you guys enough for this. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the Lighthouse were. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next Peak Stasis video.